I left my wife after she said, "Other men want me," during an argument. 3 months later, our marriage is completely different. I, 30M, never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. My wife and I have been married for almost 7 years now, and things have been good for most of that time. We have a nice house in the suburbs, decent jobs, and what I thought was a solid relationship. That is, until about 3 months ago. It started with small things. She began staying late at work more often, became protective of her phone, and seemed distant during our conversations. I didn't think much of it at first. We all go through phases, right? But then the argument started. We'd fight about the stupidest things, dishes left in the sink, not texting back quickly enough, spending too much time with friends. These weren't new behaviors, but suddenly they were major issues. During one particularly heated argument about me forgetting to pick up something from the store, she snapped. "You know what? I don't even know why I bother with you anymore. There are plenty of men who would love to be with me, who would actually appreciate me." I froze. We'd said hurtful things before in the heat of the moment, but this felt different. It wasn't just what she said, but the way she said it, like she'd been thinking about it for a while. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "It means exactly what I said," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "I have options. Maybe I should explore them." That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I left for work before she woke up. I couldn't concentrate all day, her words playing on repeat in my mind. Was she already seeing someone else? Had she been approached by other men? Was our marriage over, and I was the last to know? When I got home that evening, I tried to talk to her about it. She brushed it off, saying she was just angry and didn't mean anything by it. But something felt off. The trust between us had cracked, and I couldn't unsee it. For the next few weeks, things were tense but civil. We went through the motions of daily life, but the connection was gone. I started noticing things I hadn't before. How often her work friend would text late at night, how she'd leave the room to take calls, how she'd dress up more for certain events where I wasn't invited. Then came the night that changed everything. We were at a dinner party hosted by her coworkers. I didn't know many people there, so I stuck close to her at first. But as the night went on, she drifted away, laughing and chatting with others while I stood awkwardly by the food table. I watched as she touched her colleague's arm, leaned in close to hear him over the music. It wasn't overtly inappropriate, but it wasn't the way my wife usually behaved either. On the drive home, I was quiet. She asked what was wrong, and I finally let it all out. "Are you having an affair?" I asked, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. She laughed, actually laughed. "Don't be ridiculous." "Then what was that tonight? The touching, the flirting?" "Oh my God, I was being friendly. Not everything is about you. This is exactly why I said what I said before. You're suffocating me with your insecurity." "So I'm imagining things? The late nights, the secret texts, the password on your phone that changed last month." She went silent for a moment. "I'm not having this conversation right now." When we got home, instead of going to bed, I packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there with the lies hanging in the air between us. As I zipped up my duffel, she stood in the doorway. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice smaller now. "You said there are plenty of men who want you. I'm leaving so you can have them handle whatever it is you need, because clearly I'm not enough." "You're being childish," she said, but I could hear the panic creeping into her voice. "Maybe," I replied, "but at least I'm being honest." I spent that night at a hotel, and the next day I called my brother and asked if I could crash at his place for a while. He didn't ask questions, just said yes. I told my wife I needed space to think, and she reluctantly agreed. Being away from home gave me clarity. I realized how much I'd been walking on eggshells, how anxious I'd become trying to figure out what was happening in my own relationship. It wasn't healthy, and it wasn't me. After a week, I met her for coffee. She looked tired, her eyes puffy like she hadn't been sleeping well. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but I held my ground. "I think we need to separate," I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth. "Because of one comment I made during a fight?" she asked incredulously. "No, because of everything that's happened since. I don't trust you anymore, and you don't seem to respect me." "That's not fair," she protested. "I've never cheated on you. Maybe not physically," I conceded. "But emotionally? I'm not so sure." She started crying then, saying she loved me, that she'd been stressed with work and took it out on me. She promised to be better, to work on our marriage. For a moment, I wavered. But then I remembered the look on her face when she told me about all the men who wanted her. There was no love there, only contempt. "I need time," I said finally. "Real time, not just a week. I need to figure out if this is still what I want." Update 1. 2 weeks later. It's been 2 weeks since I moved out. Living with my brother has been interesting. He's a bachelor and his place reflects that, but it's been good for me to be around someone who doesn't walk on eggshells around me. My wife has been texting and calling constantly. At first, her messages were angry. How could I abandon our marriage like this? How childish I was being. Then they turned sad and pleading. Now they're mostly just checking in, asking when we can talk. I've been going to therapy twice a week. It was my brother's suggestion, actually. He said I looked like a man who's forgotten which way is up, and he wasn't wrong. The therapist has been helping me sort through my feelings and recognize some patterns in our relationship that weren't healthy. Yesterday, I finally agreed to meet with my wife. We went to a park, neutral territory. She looked good, put together in a way that told me she'd spent time on her appearance. I probably looked like hell in comparison, but I didn't care. She started by apologizing, telling me how much she missed me and how the house felt empty without me. I listened, but I didn't rush to fill the silences when she stopped talking. That's something I've been working on, not rushing to smooth things over. I've been thinking about what you said, she finally admitted. About emotional cheating. I didn't see it that way at the time, but maybe you're right. It was the first real acknowledgement she'd made that something was wrong. I asked her to elaborate, and she explained that she'd been enjoying the attention from her coworker, that it made her feel desired in a way she hadn't in a while. But I never acted on it, she insisted. I wouldn't do that to you. You already did, I replied. The moment you decided to use him as ammunition against me, you crossed a line. She didn't have a response to that. We sat in silence for a while, watching kids play on the swings nearby. I want to try again, she said eventually. I want to fix this. Tell me what I need to do. I told her I was still figuring that out myself. We agreed to meet again in a week. As I watched her walk away, I felt a mix of emotions, love, anger, confusion, and somewhere buried underneath it all, a tiny spark of hope. Update 2, 1 month later. It's been a month since I left, and things are complicated. My wife and I have been seeing a marriage counselor together. It's been brutal at times, dredging up issues we'd both buried. But it's also been enlightening. During our third session, my wife finally admitted that she had been texting with her coworker in ways that crossed the line. Nothing physical had happened, but they'd been flirting, sending messages late at night, confiding in each other about personal things, including our marital problems. The counselor asked her why she thought that was okay, and her answer stunned me. Because it didn't feel like cheating. It felt like having someone who saw me, who was excited by me. I didn't realize how much I'd been missing that. It hurt to hear, but I also understood. We'd fallen into a routine, taking each other for granted. The passion had faded, replaced by comfort and familiarity. That wasn't a bad thing necessarily, but we'd stopped putting in the effort to keep the spark alive. I've been staying at my own place now, a small apartment I'm renting month to month. It's sparse but functional. My brother was great, but I needed space to think without his commentary on my situation, though his heart was in the right place. My wife wants me to come home. She's cut off contact with the coworker, even requested a transfer to a different department. She's been sending me small things, a book she thought I'd like, a photo of us from our honeymoon, a handwritten letter about what she loves about me. Part of me wants to go back. I miss our home, our life together. But another part is scared that nothing will really change, that we'll fall back into the same patterns. The counselor says that's normal, that rebuilding trust takes time. For now, I'm taking it day by day. We're dating again, as strange as that sounds. Dinner once a week, movies, conversations that don't revolve around bills or chores. It's awkward sometimes, but also reminds me of why I fell in love with her in the first place. I don't know where we'll end up, but I know that whatever happens, I'm stronger now. I've learned to stand up for myself, to not accept less than I deserve. And strangely enough, I have her comment about plenty of men to thank for that wake-up call. Update 3, 3 months later. It's been 3 months since that fight changed everything, and I'm back home. Not permanently, we're calling it a trial period. 2 weeks in, and it's been different. The apartment feels like our home again, but with new boundaries. We each have our own spaces, time for ourselves. We're still seeing the counselor, still working through issues as they come up instead of letting them fester. My wife has been transparent about everything. Her phone is unlocked. She tells me where she's going and who she's with. Sometimes it feels like too much, like she's overcompensating. The counselor says that's part of the process, that we'll find a balance eventually. The hardest part has been dealing with friends and family. Some know what happened, others just know we went through a rough patch. The questions are awkward, the concern looks even worse. But we're handling it together, which feels significant. Last night, we had dinner with her parents. Her father pulled me aside afterward and said, "I'm proud of you for fighting for your marriage, but prouder that you were willing to walk away to keep your self-respect." It wasn't what I expected from him, but it meant a lot. There are still moments when the doubt creeps in. When she's late coming home from work, when she gets a text and I can't see her reaction. But they're becoming less frequent. Trust is growing back, slowly but surely. We're not the same people we were before. I'm more assertive, less willing to brush things under the rug. She's more conscious of her words, more appreciative of what we have. We're both more intentional about our relationship. Sometimes I think about that night, about walking out with my duffel bag. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most necessary. We needed to break to rebuild. We needed to see what we stood to lose. I don't know what the future holds for us. Marriage isn't a fairy tale. It's work. Hard, messy, everyday work. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're both equally invested in doing that work. So here we are, starting over at year 7. Different, but maybe better. Scarred, but healing. And moving forward, one day at a time.